Buddha statue has been found in Berenike. It's in the Red Sea, from where the trade would go towards Rome. Clearly, Buddhist ideas were traveling from Sopara, which is near Mumbai, along the monsoon winds to the Red Sea to Berenike port, from thence to Alexandria and then to Rome. Milinda, and about him we know only because of a book called Milinda Panna, where he is having a conversation Nagasena, clarifying his doubts on Buddhism. Along with the Buddha statues, you also find the images of Ram, because the royal court saw Ram as the images and they saw Ram as the Bodhisattva. And therefore the Ramayana is found in Burma, in Laos, in Cambodia, in Thailand. Even though they were Buddhists, Ramayana played a very important role there. Then you have the Buddhism traveling southwards along the Southeast Asia through Indonesia, Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, the Southeast Asian countries, again going to China. So you have this great loop of Buddhism spreading everywhere.
What are the connections between political history of India and Buddhism? Also, what are the links between economy and Buddhism? Most importantly, what are the factors which led to decline of Buddhism in India? All these questions in today's episode of Art and Culture with Devdutt Pattanaik. Hello viewers, I am Srivastava. So when we started this special series of episodes in Art and Culture with Devdutt Pattanaik on Buddhism, our aim was clear that we want to cover Buddhism from various aspects, from various dimensions. So we started from current affairs, we talked about history, we talked about art and culture, and many areas. Now in today's episode, let us begin by asking Devdutt on the political history part, where there are some big names, some big rulers, some kings, some heroes associated to Buddhism in some or the other way. So Devdutt, if you can throw some light on what students or viewers must know when it comes to the political history of India with relation to Buddhism.
Around 500 BC, you have King Ajatashatru and Bimbisara of the Haryanka dynasty, and these are the oldest layer of kings associated with Buddhism, the patrons. Ajatashatru and Bimbisara also associated with Jainism, mind you, so it must be kept in mind. These are very important kings found in the Bihar area, in the Mithila area. About 100 years after the Buddha, around 400 BC, you have the Shishunaga dynasty, the second Buddhist council. Again, you have the Kala Ashoka over there. Around Ashokan times, that is 250 BC, you have again one of the most powerful kings in India whose edicts are found along trade routes across India. They are found in Gandhara, in Kharoshti script. They are found as south as Kanagahalli, which is in Krishna river basin. It is found in the Godavari delta, Krishna delta, in Odisha, in Uttarakhand. So you have all these places indicating the influence of Ashoka, very important king. Then the Indo-Greek king Meander or Milinda, and about him we know only because of a book called Milinda Panna, where he is having a conversation with Nagasena and clarifying his doubts on Buddhism. And there's another king called Kanishka of the Kushana dynasty, linked with the fourth Buddhist council, which takes place in Kashmir and is linked with the major evolution of the Mahayana thought, which believes in bodhisattvas and which believes in universal Buddhahood, and about the concept of compassion through the goddess Tara. So the new idea that emerges. So these are the major kings. The Tantric Buddhism, there is a king called Indrabhuti that has to be remembered. Indrabhuti is linked with the evolution of Tantric Buddhism in Odisha side, and he's linked to the city of Sambhalpur, again a Tantric site, which may be linked to Shambhala, the ancient mysterious Shambhala, which may be Sambhalpur, and Padmasambhava, who takes Vajrayana Buddhism to the Himalayan region, comes from Uddiyana. While scholars believe it is a Swat Valley in Pakistan, more and more scholars are of the belief that it is from Odisha, Uddiyana. So this is how the kings get connected now. So you have the kings getting involved During the Chola dynasty, you have the Jain, the Buddhists being, if you see the Tamil literature of Manimegala, Shillapadikaram, in the southern coast of India near Kaveri, you have Buddhism proliferating amongst merchants and being challenged by Jains as well as Buddhism, but eventually being overpowered by Shaivites and Vaishnavites and driven out of the southern regions. You don't have images after some time in the coastal regions.
Thank you, Devdutt. I'm sure when students were listening to this answer, they would also be reminded of their textbook on Buddhism where a lot of rulers and kings are mentioned. So this is the best way to revise. Okay, so please make sure that you take down the notes, look into the readers. There's not just Ashok. Okay, there are so many other kings which are associated to Buddhism. So just make sure that you're making the note properly. You're knowing the dynasty of these rulers, and the task will be very easy. Now, after talking about the political history and especially knowing about the kings and rulers which are who were associated with Buddhism, let's move on, Devdutt, to another important aspect of it, and that is economy. Now, we know that from the perspective of economy, you've also mentioned in previous episodes that how Buddhism should be studied. What should we know about Buddhism? So if you can throw light once again on this aspect of linking economy with Buddhism.
When we think of Buddhism, we think of monasteries and monks who have given up the world, but that's not actually true. Historically, we know Buddhism is very strongly linked with trade and trade routes. So wherever you'll find Buddhist site, there has to be a trade route. Remember, it begins with Pataliputra, the center of power, the center of business. That is Magadha Rajagriha. Then you have Kashi, which is a major trading site. You have Mathura, which is a major trading site. Gandhara, major trading site. You have the Dakshinapatha going to Ellora, Bhaja, Karla, Kanheri caves, very, very important sites. Then the delta of the Krishna River, Nagarjun Konda. Remember, Nagarjun Konda is a major site which got which got submerged because of the Nagarjun Konda Sagar Dam, and archaeologists had to move these artifacts to an island which is now located. So what you find today are artifacts which were relocated to an island when the dam was built. So Nagarjun Konda is that. You have Amravati in the south and Kanagahalli in Karnataka. So every state has something. These are all trading routes. Then they travel from these eastern and western coast. Where do they travel? We know that Buddha statue has been found recently near the Red Sea in Berenike. It's in the Red Sea. From where the trade would go towards Rome. Clearly, Buddhist ideas were traveling from Sopara, which is near Mumbai, along the monsoon winds to the Red Sea to Berenike port, from thence to Alexandria and then to Rome. That's known. The Buddha ideas had reached Europe through the western coast. But it is the bigger influence of Buddhism is seen in the eastern part of the world, in the Southeast Asia, because from Kalinga, that is Odisha, from Andhra Pradesh, from Nagarjun Konda, from the Kaveri Delta, from the ports of the eastern side of India, ships would sail to Java. And there you have the Borobudur shrine, which indicates the Buddhist influence. Then it has sailed to Thailand, it has turned to Burma, to Cambodia, to Vietnam. All these places, along with Buddhism, Hinduism spread. Hinduism stopped spreading after about 1000 AD, but Buddhism continues, especially from Sri Lanka. The Theravada school spreads to Bagan, which is a major site in Myanmar, Burma. Then you have in Ayutthaya, the pagodas of Ayutthaya, testament to Buddhism. The unique thing about Thai Buddhism and Myanmar Buddhism is that along with the Buddha statues, you also find the images of Ram, because the royal court saw Ram as their images and they saw Ram as the Bodhisattva. And therefore the Ramayana is found in Burma, in Laos, in Cambodia, in Thailand. Even though they were Buddhists, Ramayana played a very important role there, even in even in Indonesia, strangely not in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, Ramayana doesn't play a very important role. This is a very unique thing to remember. Although nowadays, many people associate Sri Lanka with Ravana's Lanka, Ramayana does not have a Sinhalese work until much later. It comes in much later in small pockets and small folk practices, but is not dominant of the court rituals. Something to remember. So the trade routes, the political routes are important to understand Buddhism.
All right then, so with these two aspects on political history and economy, we've covered largely most of these sub areas of Buddhism. But one major part which is still remaining for this episode is to talk about the decline of Buddhism in India. Now, there is a debate also, there are multiple factors which are told to us. And it's a very important question. Now, when you're writing it from the perspective of a student in an examination, you have to be a little careful in writing also, because it's a debate, there are factors. So let's understand how to deal with this topic of decline of Buddhism from Devdutt.
So how did Buddhism decline in India? Now that's a very controversial question, because the traditional narrative is that the Muslims came to India, they burnt Nalanda, destroyed Nalanda, and from there the monks traveled to Tibet, and that's how Tibetan Buddhism began, and that's how Buddhism was wiped out. Another thought is that the Brahmins destroyed Buddhism, because it is very well known right from Ashokan times that the Shramanas, that is the Buddhists and the Jains, and the Brahmanas, the rituals, those who conducted fire rituals, were like the mongoose and the cobra fighting each other all the time for royal patronage. They were both fighting for royal patronage. The Vedic practices, the Hindu practices were more agricultural, the Buddhist practices were more mercantile, and therefore really they were out of each other's hair for a very, very long time, until the trade routes collapsed after the fall of the Roman Empire. The long trade routes which extended right from Rome right up to Southeast Asia, from the along the monsoon winds, this is where really Buddhism flourished, which is why Buddhism moved along the Uttarapatha to Gandhara, thence to Central Asia, where we have the Bamia Buddha, and finally the Buddhism of China, Japan, and Korea. And then you have the Buddhism traveling southwards along the Southeast Asia through Indonesia, Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, the Southeast Asian countries, again going to China. So you have this great loop of Buddhism spreading everywhere, and it works fine till about the rise of the Cholas around 1000 AD, after which you start seeing something shift. The Tantric Buddhism was flourishing much in Odisha in the Pala era, in Bengal. If you remember, if you study history, you will know that what is called the Rajput phase of Indian history after Harshavardhan, who was a major patron of Buddhism. You have the Pala kings fighting from the eastern side, and they were Buddhists. So clearly 8th century, 9th century, it's a Buddhist center. Odisha is a Buddhist center at that time. Ratnagiri, Udaygiri, Lalitgiri. A different kind of Buddhism, not Theravada, not Mahayana. It is the Tantric Buddhism, which is the last stronghold in the eastern part of India, very, very important site. And then gradually you find things shifting, because what is happening? The royal patronage is going towards the Brahmins. More the Brahmins are getting royal patronage. Patronage is not going to the monasteries, and the monasteries become intellectual centers but are not connected with the people anymore. They're moved away from the people. So the merchants are gone. The people connect is going away. It becomes isolated centers of excellence like the various universities like Nalanda, where scholars are coming. Remember, Nalanda is a place where scholars have been coming. The Chinese scholars are a good indicator of the height of Buddhism, because you have Faxian coming around the Gupta period, you have Huansang coming around Harshavardhan's time, roughly when the Prophet Muhammad was present in Arabia, so the early 7th century. That is when Harshavardhan is there, that's when Faxian is there, after which the decline starts. In fact, when Faxian around the Gupta period enters India, he sees Buddha flourishing in its height. But when Huansang comes around Harshavardhan's time, he sees the decline. It is also important to remember that which parts of India was Buddhism very good, was very powerful. Definitely northwest part of India because of the Swat Valley. But once the Hunas come over there in the 5th century, that part loses its Buddhist vitality. It goes away. It is there more in Central Asia and less in Gandhara and Kashmir. It's sort of by 5th century, because of the Huna invasion, that part loses its Buddhist vitality. By the 10th century, the Buddhist vitality in Odisha, in Bengal, starts to wane. One reason is because you have the rise of the Bhakti movement. The Jagannath temple is being built, the Shiva temples are being built. So all the resources, state resources, are going towards Hinduism and moving away from the rival faction, the Buddhist faction. So they're becoming weak. And then, of course, the final blow is the arrival of Islam, destroying Nalanda. Although it does not happen immediately, that one day it all disappears, it takes a few centuries. Over time, slowly the patronage wipes away. That's for the eastern part. So in 5th century AD, Hunas in North India. By 10th, 12th century, it is a combination of loss of loyal patronage and the arrival of Islam and the Turkish warlords in the eastern part of India. What about southern part of India? Southern part of India, trade routes have collapsed, so the patronage has gone away. The kings are, for example, if you look at Satavahan dynasty, the kings patronized Hinduism, but the merchants patronized the Buddhist shrines, which you find in Nagarjun Konda and Amravati, and of course the Karla cave. So the merchants were funding it, not the kings. And that's an important part to remember. So when the merchants go away, the trading goes away, and these Buddhist shrines go away. The viharas, the monasteries, were built from around 100 BC, and they were the flourishing centers in these trade routes, and they sort of lose their funding when the merchants go away. And by the 5th and 10th century, that is dying out. The local connect is dying out, and of course this major hostility from the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites, who absorb Buddhist practices. So it's not that it's gone away, they absorb Buddhist practice. Let me give you an example. The statue of Avalokiteshvara, who has Amitabha Buddha on his head and has Tara by his side, starts appearing looking like Shiva's image, like it's Shiva with Ganga on his head and Parvati by his side. It's very difficult to make the difference between these two images. So it seems that Shaivism and Buddhism sort of absorb themselves. You see Buddha appearing as the 9th avatar of Vishnu, and what is interesting is, what is the role of the 9th avatar of Vishnu? The 9th avatar of Vishnu says, do not perform blood sacrifices, do not perform animal sacrifices, become vegetarian, and you suddenly find vegetarian practices proliferating in the Brahmin community, and one wonders whether this is the Buddhist influence, because by becoming vegetarian, they got the support of the merchant lobby, the Baniya lobby. And once you get the support of the Baniya lobby, and in exchange, the Brahmins created the concept of Dvija and started including the merchants in the Vedic Varna system. Originally, it was only Brahmins, the kings, and the common people. But now a third category is introduced called the Vaniks, the Vaishyas, and I think this is a quid pro quo, that you fund us and we'll become vegetarian. This is also a possibility, because you suddenly see, especially in the south, the proliferation of vegetarianism and linked with people who in Hindu monasteries, which didn't exist before 8th century AD in a big way. So Shankaracharya is also called the crypto-Buddhist. So you have this very strong absorption of Buddhist rites within Hinduism, which is taking place, which is also contributing to the decline. So what are the causes of decline? There are external forces like the Hunas and the Turkish warlords, the Muslim kings. There is the internal rivalry with the Hindus, the Cobra and the Mongoose phenomena. Third is the loss of mercantile practices, which were really the backbone of Hinduism in India. So these are the three. If you remember these three, I think that's good enough. Rest of it is very advanced, and you don't need that much.
Thank you, Devdutt. It's quite interesting the way you explained to us various factors which led to decline of Buddhism, whether in the form of images, which shows how Buddhism declined, which is also reflected in images, or when you're talking about merchants and economy. So students, when you are giving these factors as decline of Buddhism as a part of debate or a general answer, please make sure that you're giving examples to prove your point, or to help the examiner understand that why are you particularly talking about these factors. Okay, so these three factors which Devdutt tells us are very important for us. So please note them down. And well, as I see that this can be a potential prelims questions also, as well as for your mains examination, it is definitely a very important topic. Now, that's not all on Buddhism, because there's a lot remaining. Probably in the next one episode, we would cover that part too. For example, what is modern Buddhism, okay, or in the modern day, how you see Buddhism. And then one part which we should have done earlier, we should, definitely talk about is the textual sources of Buddhism, which is again an important topic to be dealt with. Well, the series will go on. We'll talk more about an art and culture, but in the next episode, we're going to take up these two sub-themes. Till then, keep watching Art and Culture with Devdutt Pattanaik. Keep making the use of all our initiatives of UPSC Essentials of the Indian Express from the website and on the YouTube channel of the Indian Express. As I always say, think smart, work hard, conquer your goal. Bye-bye.